You're driving home. It's late. Maybe you just finished a long shift, or you're coming back from dinner with your family. You're doing nothing wrong. Completely nothing. And then you see it. Blue and red lights flashing in your rearview mirror. Your heart rate spikes. Your hands tighten on the wheel. You pull over. The officer walks up to your window, and after a few questions about where you're going, where you've been, he says something that stops your blood cold. Mind if I take a look inside your vehicle? And here's the thing. Most people in that exact moment have absolutely no idea what the law actually says. They don't know what they're allowed to say. They don't know what the officer can and cannot legally do. They're operating on pure instinct, usually fear. And that fear can get you into serious trouble fast. So today, we're going to talk about something that directly affects every single person who has ever driven a car in this country. We're going to break down exactly what the law says about police searches of your vehicle, what rights you actually have, what situations give an officer real legal authority to search, and critically, what happens when they do it wrong. Because here's what most people don't realize. The gap between what police can legally do and what they actually do is enormous. And if you don't know the difference, you have no way to protect yourself. Before we go any further, I want to be clear about one thing. I'm not a lawyer or legal advisor. What you're about to hear is for educational and informational purposes only. Laws vary depending on your location, your state, and your specific circumstances. So please, always consult a qualified attorney or legal professional if you're dealing with a real situation involving your rights. Now, let's get into it, because this is stuff you genuinely need to know. Let's start at the very foundation. The legal bedrock of everything we're going to talk about today. And it comes from 4 words written into the United States Constitution over 230 years ago. Unreasonable searches and seizures. The Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution prohibits the government from conducting unreasonable searches and seizures. That's it. That's the core. It sounds simple. But the legal battle over what unreasonable actually means has been playing out in American courtrooms for generations, and it directly shapes what happens the moment a police officer asks to look inside your car. Here's what's fascinating and disturbing at the same time. The law governing police conduct in the United States doesn't come primarily from detailed written statutes the way it does in many other countries. It comes from court decisions. Hundreds and hundreds of court decisions, handed down by judges in individual cases over decades. The Supreme Court has issued rulings that apply to every single police department across the country, all 18,000 of them. And those rulings have created a system where, depending on the specific circumstances of your traffic stop, police may have far more authority than you ever imagined. Or they may have almost none at all. This distinction matters more than you know. Because the difference between a legal search and an illegal one can be the difference between evidence being used against you or thrown completely out of court. So what does the law actually say about your car? Let's talk about what's called the automobile exception. And this is where a lot of people get blindsided. In general, the Fourth Amendment requires police to get a warrant before searching your property. A warrant means a judge has reviewed the evidence, decided there's probable cause to believe something illegal will be found, and signed off on the search. That's the standard. That's the protection the Constitution was designed to provide. But here's the catch that most people don't know. The courts have carved out a massive exception for vehicles. It's called the automobile exception, and it goes back over 100 years. The reasoning the courts used was this: cars are mobile. If police had to stop and get a warrant every time they wanted to search a vehicle, the car would be long gone by the time the warrant came through. So the courts decided that officers don't need a warrant to search your car as long as they have what's called probable cause. Probable cause. Remember that phrase. It's going to matter a lot in the next few minutes. Probable cause means the officer has specific, concrete facts, not just a feeling, not just a hunch, that lead a reasonable person to believe that evidence of a crime is in your vehicle. If an officer pulls you over and smells marijuana, that can be probable cause. If they see something suspicious on your seat in plain view, that can be probable cause. If you match the description of a suspect in a recent crime, that combined with other factors could give them probable cause. But here's what matters. Probable cause has to be real. It has to be based on actual observed facts. An officer can't just say, "I had a feeling," or "you looked nervous." Nervousness alone, coming from a neighborhood police consider high crime, driving at night courts have held that these things by themselves don't add up to probable cause. The problem? In the real world, the line between legitimate probable cause and a pretextual stop, meaning a stop where the officer is using a minor traffic violation as an excuse to investigate something else, is often invisible to you in the moment. And the Supreme Court has actually made this worse over time, not better. Here's a ruling that should shock you. In a case called Warren v. United States, the Supreme Court unanimously decided that even if an officer's real motivation for pulling you over is something totally unrelated, racial profiling, a hunch, personal bias, as long as they can point to any traffic violation, the stop is legally valid. Any traffic violation, broken tail light, slightly over the speed limit, not signaling a lane change. In fact, legal scholars have pointed out what some officers refer to informally as the idea that essentially every driver commits at least one traffic infraction in a short stretch of road, meaning police can pull over practically anyone and then use that stop as a gateway to a search as long as they can come up with justification after the fact. Does that sit right with you? Because it shouldn't. And yet that's the law as it stands. Now let's talk about the most powerful word in a traffic stop. And it's a word you use every day without thinking about how much legal weight it carries. Consent. If you give an officer permission to search your car, almost nothing else matters. You've waived your Fourth Amendment protections. The search becomes legal whether or not the officer had any right to conduct it otherwise. Anything they find can be used against you. And here's the part that genuinely stunned me when I first learned it. Police are not required to tell you that you have the right to refuse. Read that again. Officers do not have to inform you that you can say no. The Supreme Court addressed this directly. In a case called Ohio v. Robinette, the court ruled that police don't need to advise you of your right to refuse a consent search. So when an officer asks, "Mind if I take a look?" that question isn't as casual as it sounds. It's the moment where your knowledge of the law is either going to protect you or fail you completely. Now, refusing consent does not mean you're guilty of anything. Courts have repeatedly recognized that the act of refusing a search cannot by itself be used as probable cause to justify a search. Refusing is your constitutional right. Exercising a constitutional right cannot be evidence of wrongdoing. But in the moment, at the side of a road at night with an officer standing next to your window, most people don't know that. Most people feel like saying no will make them look suspicious. Most people give consent when they absolutely don't have to. This is especially significant when you understand what happens after you consent. Police don't just glance in the back seat. A consensual search can extend to every inch of your vehicle: the trunk, the center console, under the seats, inside bags and containers. What starts as a casual, "Can I take a look?" can turn into a 45-minute search of every compartment in your car. So what do you actually say? Clearly, "Officer, I don't consent to a search." That's it. You're not being rude. You're not being combative. You're exercising a constitutional right that generations of Americans fought and litigated to protect, and it's your right to use it. But let's talk about what happens after you say no. Because refusing consent doesn't automatically end the encounter. It doesn't mean the officer immediately has to let you go. If an officer has probable cause, those concrete observable facts we talked about, they can search your car whether you consent or not. The automobile exception applies regardless of your permission if probable cause exists. So, refusing consent doesn't protect you from a search that was already legally justified. What it does is prevent a search that had no justification other than your permission. Here's where it gets even more layered. Officers can also search your vehicle incident to arrest. If you're placed under arrest during a traffic stop, police have the authority to search the areas within your immediate reach for weapons and evidence. That's been the rule for decades. The courts have extended it significantly over time, meaning the moment you're arrested, your car becomes searchable in ways that go far beyond what you might expect. And then there's what's called the inventory search. This is a particularly interesting one. If your car is being towed or impounded, say you're arrested and nobody else can move the vehicle, police are permitted to conduct what they call an inventory search. The stated purpose is administrative. They're cataloging the contents of the vehicle to protect your property and protect themselves from later claims that they stole something. But in practice, an inventory search is functionally identical to a regular search, and anything found during that inventory can be used as evidence. So let's recap where we are. Police can search your car without a warrant if they have probable cause. They can search it if you consent. They can search it incident to arrest. They can search it during an inventory after impoundment. And depending on the circumstances, they can sometimes even search it based on the smell of certain substances or the plain view of items inside. Starting to see why this matters? Let's talk about what's called a Terry stop, because this is another crucial piece of the puzzle that affects millions of Americans every year, including in the context of vehicles. In 1968, the Supreme Court decided a landmark case called Terry versus Ohio, and that case established what's now known as the stop and frisk doctrine. The rule that came out of that decision is this: a police officer can briefly detain you, not arrest you, just temporarily stop you, if they have what the courts call reasonable suspicion that you are or are about to be involved in criminal activity. Reasonable suspicion is a lower standard than probable cause. It doesn't require the same level of concrete evidence. It requires articulable facts, meaning the officer must be able to state specific reasons, not just a gut feeling. Now, how does this apply to your car? During a traffic stop, you are essentially in a Terry stop situation. The officer has the legal authority to temporarily detain you. They can ask for your license, registration, and proof of insurance. They can ask where you're going and where you've been. Now I want to spend a moment on something that doesn't get talked about enough: the racial dimension of traffic stops and vehicle searches. Because the law doesn't operate the same way for everyone, and pretending otherwise isn't just naive, it's dangerous. The data on this is overwhelming. Studies have found consistently that people of color are significantly more likely to be stopped by police than white drivers. They're more likely to be searched. And here's the statistic that should make every person paying attention angry. Searches of black and Hispanic drivers are actually less likely to turn up contraband than searches of white drivers, meaning police are searching people of color more frequently, with less actual justification and finding less. That's what racial profiling looks like in the data, and the law has struggled enormously to address this, because proving racial discrimination in an individual stop is nearly impossible. Unless an officer explicitly states a racially motivated reason, which obviously almost never happens, courts have had extreme difficulty finding that any particular stop violated the Equal Protection Clause. The Warren decision we talked about earlier made this even harder. By allowing any traffic violation to justify any stop, regardless of the officer's actual motivation, the Supreme Court essentially gave pretext, stops a constitutional green light. Let's talk about what happens when police get it wrong. Because they do. And what the law says about that matters enormously. The primary legal tool that exists to address unlawful police searches is called the exclusionary rule. The basic concept is this: if police search you or your vehicle illegally, without a warrant when one was required, without consent, without probable cause, any evidence they find as a result of that illegal search cannot be used against you in court. The legal term is that the evidence gets suppressed. The exclusionary rule has been part of American law since 1961. This sounds like a powerful protection, and in some cases it is. It means that if you're charged with a crime and the evidence against you came from an illegal search, you can challenge that search and potentially have the charges dismissed entirely. But here's what legal scholars have pointed out and documented extensively. The exclusionary rule has serious limitations as an accountability measure. First, it only helps people who are charged with a crime. If police illegally search your car, find nothing, and let you go, you have no legal remedy. You were violated, your rights were infringed, but since no charges were filed, the exclusionary rule doesn't apply. Second, even when the rule does apply, it primarily punishes the prosecutor, not the officer. The officer who conducted the illegal search may never even know their evidence was suppressed. Their behavior may never change. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. I am not a lawyer or legal advisor.